An impoverished fisherman saves a girl from a capsizing yacht. He was unaware that she was the offspring of a wealthy. The tempest engulfed the night. The wind howled across the open sea, assaulting the sails of Blaine's little fishing boat as it pitched wildly between surges. Precipitation descended in frigid torrents, obscuring vision and unyielding. He clenched his teeth, his hands grasping the wheel with such intensity that his knuckles turned pale. Every instinct urged him to retreat, to reach the shore before the ocean claimed another fragment of his essence. He was nearly there. He discerned the subtle orange luminescence of the waterfront through the mist. Upon the radio's crackle, static ensued, followed by a voice. "Is anyone present? This is Tranquility. The engine is inoperative. I am experiencing water ingress. Kindly assist." The communication was interrupted, engulfed by static. Blaine became immobile. He adjusted the dial meticulously, however the voice did not re-emerge. Only wind, static, and disorder. He faltered. Another affluent youth, adrift and pretending to command $1 million plaything, he mused. However, as the thought entered his head, he was already redirecting the boat into the tempest. "Curse it," he snarled, pulling the throttle forcefully. The ship creaked as the bow rose to confront another wave directly. He pursued the source of the voice, relying more on instinct than reason, straining through sheets of rain until he detected it. A dim glow of orange in the darkness, the distinct outline of a boat tilting perilously to one side, smoke emanating from the lower deck. "Serenity," he murmured. He advanced, maneuvering vigorously. As he approached, lightning illuminated the landscape for a fleeting, eerie moment. The yacht was partially submerged, with the stern practically submerged, and there, grasping the rail, was a figure in a drenched white shirt and shorts, endeavoring to reach the lifeboat. Blaine failed to contemplate. He seized a rope, removed his bulky coat, and plunged. The water was dark and frigid, laden with detritus and petroleum. He struck forcefully, cleaving through it with adept might. She was losing her grip when he reached her. "I have you," he exclaimed, encircling her with one arm as her body collapsed. She failed to answer. He hoisted her upward in successive motions till they were at the perimeter of his boat. He lifted her with sheer strength and adrenaline, his chest laboring. She fell unconscious upon the deck. Her foot was hemorrhaging, a serrated laceration down her ankle resulting from the bent handrail. Her skin was frigid, her lips a shade of blue, and her drenched garments adhered to her like seaweed. Blaine muttered an expletive in frustration. He pulled her into the little cabin and enveloped her in a rough woolen blanket. He ignited the emergency heater, positioned it adjacent to her, and then knelt by her. Her eyes flickered, yet remained closed. He ripped a section of his shirt and commenced cleaning the incision on her leg, attempting to avoid the sight of the blood. It was superficial yet chaotic. She uttered a small groan, as agony intruded upon her daze. "Indeed, dear. Text, I surmise it is painful," he murmured, fastening the bandage with his calloused fingers. He then reclined, gazing at her as the firelight danced across her pallid visage. She appeared youthful, perhaps in her mid-20s, with refined, delicate, and somewhat costly features. A slender gold necklace remained affixed to her neck. "Typical," Blaine remarked with bitterness. "Another entitled heiress who has no place here, perceiving the ocean as merely an expansive Instagram filter." The wind howled against the hull, yet he scarcely perceived it now. He observed her breathing slowly and shallowly, and despite his efforts, anxiety infiltrated his mind. "You are fortunate I was nearby," he remarked, anticipating no response. "Out here, no one will come to your aid if you falter, particularly not for individuals like myself. Yet, there remains nothing." He raised his hand and gently caressed her forehead. Chilly, however not perilously so. She would be fine if the storm did not intensify. She stirred once again, her head turning towards him, her lips slightly parted. "I did not wish to perish as my father did," she said, so softly that he nearly overlooked it. Blaine gazed, taken aback. She lapsed back into oblivion. He breathed gradually and reclined against the wall, combing his fingers over his drenched hair. The tempest persisted outside. A girl who ought to have perished grasped onto life. Blaine Cole, a destitute fisherman and unwilling savior, suddenly occupied a cabin with an unfamiliar individual, whose name eluded him, yet whose life was now partially entrusted to his care. Morning arrived gradually, as faint light penetrated the clouds and illuminated the small cabin, where Blaine sat at the table, consuming lukewarm coffee. The storm had subsided, yet the cold persisted, permeating the damp walls and his rigid joints. The girl remained asleep on the cot, ensconced in the wool blanket. Her wet hair lay on the pillow resembling seaweed on the beach. Subsequently, she awakened. Her eyes fluttered open, bewildered, scanning the cabin before settling on him. Blaine stated brusquely, "You are safe," without offering a salutation. "You are fortunate, truly fortunate." She gradually sat up, her body resisting each motion. "Where am I?" "On my boat." "And you are welcome," he stated, placing the mug down. She squinted at him, then glanced down at her bandaged leg, the meticulously folded blanket, and the cup of water adjacent to the cot. "You rescued me." "I rescued you from the ocean," he stated bluntly. "Your salvation is contingent upon your actions." A moment of silence ensued. "I am Celeste," she uttered gently. Blaine refrained from providing his name in response. He chose to stand. "You may remain here for a few days while awaiting someone to retrieve you, but refrain from touching anything unless instructed otherwise." She nodded once, biting her lip. By noon, her mobility had improved. She persisted in assisting him with tasks despite the limp. Blaine ridiculed, yet refrained from disputation. He anticipated that she would concede after 5 minutes of dragging nets, but she persisted. She assisted in cleaning the deck, prepared unexpectedly good coffee, and inquired about the traps and the tides, as though she were genuinely interested. Upon observing her effortlessly tying knots, his eyes furrowed. "You have previously accomplished this," he murmured. "I specialized in marine biology," she stated, fixing a rope. "I have experience working on boats during field surveys. This is not my initial encounter with salt water." He remained silent, yet an internal transformation occurred within him. That nightfall, as the sun descended below the horizon, they moored near the reef. Blaine preferred to inspect the traps before to dusk, and to his astonishment, Celeste inquired if she may accompany him. "Your legs remain injured," he remarked. "I am capable of managing," she responded. He observed her limp across the deck, determination evident in each stride. Blaine observed movement near the coral shelf. A sea turtle ensnared in discarded netting, confined among a group of rocks. Prior to his response, Celeste had already knelt, retrieving a set of gloves and a diving knife from the supplies bin. "What are you doing?" he retorted. "I am aware of my actions," she stated, already submerged to the midpoint in the water. Blaine swore and leaped in after her. The current was mild yet consistent. Celeste advanced with meticulous precision, striking toward the turtle, bubbles ascending behind her. She remained composed. She did not thrash. She approached the animal, delicately grasped its flipper, and commenced cutting. Blaine lingered in proximity, observing. She expeditiously liberated the turtle in few moments. She meticulously maneuvered it away from the reef, her actions intentional and composed. Returning to the vessel, drenched and gasping for air, Celeste cleansed her visage and faced him. "Are you well?" she inquired. He gazed at her for an extended moment. "You managed that adeptly," he conceded, hesitantly. She exhibited a smile, the initial authentic expression he had observed from her. "I informed you that I am not ineffectual." He averted his gaze, concealing the subtle softening of something within him. She may have been affluent. Perhaps she should not have been out here alone. However, she was not ineffectual. For the first time, Blaine Cole was uncertain about the type of female he had retrieved from the ocean. Celeste ultimately remained longer than anticipated by either party. The harbor remained blocked for repairs following the storm, and the subsequent supply boat to the mainland would not arrive for several further days. Blaine remarked minimally about the matter, although he appeared unhurried for her departure. She honored his silence yet filled the void with subtle gestures, offering to assist in cooking, aiding with net repairs, and scrubbing the deck. She insisted on accompanying him during his daily boat excursions. To his astonishment, she maintained pace. They traversed the tranquil morning waters, gathering plastic bottles, entangled nets, and abandoned wrappers that floated on the surface like neglected commitments. Celeste donned a sun-bleached ball cap that Blaine had lent her, securing her hair with a strand of twine. Her hands became burned. She refrained from expressing discontent. One late afternoon, the sky transformed into a soft gold, and the sea appeared unusually tranquil, its surface glistening like molten glass. Blaine and Celeste were many miles offshore, drifting near the coral reef where the waters transitioned from emerald green to a deep, translucent hue. Blaine was inspecting the traps when Celeste abruptly indicated a slight disturbance in the water. She stated, leaning over the edge of the boat. Blaine squinted and then observed a giant, graceful sea turtle, even in anguish, thrashing its front flippers as it strained against the entangled remnants of a fishing net. It had probably been present for several hours, perhaps even longer. The plastic filaments had encircled its shell, severing just behind the right fin. Silently, Celeste rose, donned a pair of gloves, seized the diving knife from the supply crate, and entered the water. Blaine attempted to intervene, but by the time he uttered the first word, she was nearly midway down. He approached the periphery, observing intently. She navigated the water with an air of belonging, exuding confidence, tranquility, and proficiency. Her motions were deliberate yet effective, her body maintaining a subtle rhythm amidst the current. She approached the turtle cautiously, one hand resting on its shell for stabilization, while the other meticulously cut through the netting with intentional strokes. Blaine's fingers clutched the boat railing more firmly as he observed. She was not merely proficient, she was trained. This was not her inaugural instance of such behavior. Moments later, she emerged, water cascading down her cheeks, the turtle now liberated and gliding away, its trajectory tranquil as it returned to the reef. Upon returning to the vessel, both drenched and panting, they positioned themselves adjacent to one another, observing the turtle go into the azure depths. Blaine finally remarked, "You are aware of your actions." Celeste gazed at him, her cheeks tinged with the sea breeze. "I ought to," she responded with a subtle smile. "I have been engaged in marine conservation since completing my education." Blaine arched an eyebrow and cast his line into the water once more. She chuckled softly, remarking that you do not appear to fit the type. "What category does that belong to?" "The one who exerts much effort in the field. The majority of individuals merely issue a check, pose for a photograph beside a turtle, and deem it a contribution." She acknowledged that she attempted that once. I felt as though I had not earned anything. Subsequently, that nightfall, they positioned themselves on the beach beside to a modest fire. The aroma of cooked fish intertwined with smoke as the sky transformed into a deep violet, with stars beginning to emerge. Celeste reclined on her elbows, sand adhering to the cuff of her pants. Blaine gazed into the expanse of the water, his eyes mirroring the flames. "I once adored the ocean," he remarked softly. "I intended to structure my life around it. I pursued education in marine navigation, excelled academically, and secured a scholarship for international study." Celeste looked at him, astonished. "What transpired?" He shrugged, his visage obscured by the flickering firelight. "My father was ill, necessitating my return to manage affairs. The family vessel required repairs. Accumulation of bills occurred. Subsequently, the sea transitioned from a mere fantasy to a profession." He halted, gathering a handful of sand and allowing it to cascade through his fingers. "The ocean once embodied liberation. It now feels like a struggle for survival." Celeste paused briefly before stating, "Interestingly, for me, it is the contrary." Blaine regarded her with an arched brow. "I was born amid affluence and anticipation. Each phase of my existence was meticulously orchestrated. However, the ocean is the one environment where no one dictates my identity. No one is concerned with my identity. Only currents, wind, and silence." He scrutinized her expression. It possessed an inherent honesty, unadorned. "However, no one ever regards me with seriousness," she continued. "They observe the yacht, the surname, the wealth. They presume I am only a wealthy girl indulging in philanthropic endeavors. It transcends mere advocacy for you. It encompasses my entire existence," she replied, her tone now more subdued. "However, I have come to realize that not everyone is invested in what motivates you. Their concern is solely based on your origins." Blaine acknowledged, casting a fragment of driftwood into the flames. Sparks ascended into the darkness, resembling diminutive stars. "Individuals do not always have the liberty to select their currents," he whispered. "At times, one merely strives to stay afloat." She glanced at him, her eyes glimmering with a blend of sorrow and admiration. Subsequently, they remained in quiet for an extended period, characterized not by awkwardness or uncertainty, but by a sense of mutual understanding. The silence emerged when two individuals from disparate realms recognized they had both been influenced by something immense and wild. At that moment, the titles dissipated. Thus did the ire, the skepticism, the presumptions. They were no longer the impoverished fisherman and the fugitive yacht girl. They were two individuals suspended between previous traumas and current tranquility, discovering the fortitude to be united. It was only another tranquil evening, the type Blaine had increasingly valued since Celeste's presence. The air was saturated with salt, the sky transitioning from lavender to deep indigo, and the waves swayed the boat with its customary lullaby rhythm. He was in the cabin, his hands navigating through entangled lines, when the radio emitted a blast of static followed by a terse, frantic voice. The search persists for Celeste Monroe, daughter of shipping tycoon Douglas Monroe, who was reported missing after her yacht, Serenity, lost communication during a solitary coastal cruise. Blaine's fingers became immobilized. The name struck him with the force of cold steel. He directed his attention to the radio, absorbing the voice as it reiterated the particulars. Aries is missing, prompting extensive search efforts and a significant reward for any information. Images were disseminating. The Coast Guards had been notified. The whole eastern seaboard was on high alert. Celeste Monroe. He forcefully knocked the radio aside and ascended onto the deck in a fury. Celeste was crouched at the bow, disentangling a tangle of aged rope from one of the nets. He gazed upward as he neared, wiping her hands on her shorts, a gentle grin on her lips. However, Blaine did not reciprocate the smile. "State your name," he asked in a quiet, forceful tone. "I am Celeste Monroe." The smile diminished. "Blaine, I can elucidate." "Elucidate." His voice became very acute. "Elucidate how you have resided on my vessel, collaborated with me, and engaged in discussions about life, as if you were only another individual navigating existence. Yet all along you have been deceiving me." "I was not deceiving," she stated softly. "I simply did not inform you." "That distinction is inconsequential," he retorted. She rose gradually. "I did not desire to be regarded as a celebrity. I did not wish to assume the role of Miss Monroe. I merely aspired to be Celeste." For the first time, he gazed at her, anguish and rage intensifying in his eyes. "You led me to believe you were merely a wayward girl," he remarked, drawing closer. "You behaved as though you comprehended the experience of hardship, of striving for something genuine. However, you are a Monroe. Everything has been given to you." Her voice quivered, yet she remained resolute. "Do you genuinely believe that wealth simplifies existence?" "My father dictates every action I undertake. My mother has passed away. I have dedicated my entire adult life to pursuing something significant, something that belongs to me. In the singular instance I experience tranquility, the sole occasion I perceive recognition as an individual, you dismiss it contemptuously." Blaine averted his gaze, shaking his head. "I ought to have been more discerning." "You recounted your history," she remarked gently, "concerning your aspirations that have been overshadowed by financial obligations and responsibilities. I felt no sympathy for you. I esteemed you." He regarded her once more. However, his demeanor was suddenly frigid and defensive. "You understand," he stated, his voice as unyielding as stone. "You embody everything I have endeavored to escape throughout my life. The gatherings, the entitlement, the insincere expressions. You entered here as if you intended to feign poverty for a few days, embark on your minor maritime escapade, then return to your actual existence. That is unjust. It is the veracity." Silence lingered between them, dense and acrid. "I did not request salvation," she said. "However, I am grateful you did. Not due to my inability to exist without you, Blaine, but because for an instant, I believed I could truly be myself." He remained silent. She retrieved the necklace crafted from sea glass and twine that he had bestowed upon her merely 2 days prior. She unfastened it and extended it towards him. "I will depart in the morning." He did not accept it. She delicately positioned it on the table's edge adjacent to him, and then turned away. Her footsteps were slow and deliberate, as if each one represented a choice she regretted having to make. She refrained from weeping until she returned to the cabin, concealed from view. She stifled the scream with her fingers, unwilling for him to perceive her unraveling. Blaine stood solitary on the deck, the necklace positioned between them like a fractured bridge. Neither party have the knowledge to reconstruct. The waves gently swayed the boat, yet nothing could pacify the tempest raging within him. The dock was tranquil when Celeste departed. Silence prevailed, devoid of words or final looks. Only the sound of oars cutting through the water as she navigated the small dinghy toward the mainland. Blaine observed from the periphery of his vessel, arms folded and jaw clenched. He did not pursue her with a call. He refrained from halting her. As she vanished into the gloom, an unidentifiable weight descended upon his chest. Upon returning to the city, Celeste sensed an unsettling atmosphere. Excessively pristine, excessively refined, excessively removed from the salt that nevertheless adhered to her flesh. However, there was insufficient time for adaptation. Upon her return to the family's apartment, the world collapsed around her. Her father stood awaiting, imposing, authoritative, impeccably poised, in a fitted suit that exuded dominance. "You have brought shame upon this family," he stated without any salutation. "Do you comprehend the media's commentary?" "I did not request them to articulate anything," she responded. "You vanished," he retorted. "You instigated a search operation. You compromised our reputation. Henceforth, there will be no further fieldwork or ancillary projects. You will resume your position on the Monroe Foundation board and concentrate on the organization." "I was engaged in something substantial," she murmured. He averted his gaze. "No more aspirations, Celeste. It is time for you to mature." Simultaneously, Blaine resumed his habitual activities, fishing at dawn, mending nets, dining in solitude, and resting in the same cot beneath the same leaky roof. However, everything had transformed. The sea ceased to provide solace. The waves no longer murmured. They merely evoked memories of what he had forsaken. His catch diminished, and his curses increased. He circumvented the cove where they once sat to observe the stars, and he was unable to discard the sea glass necklace she had abandoned. One evening, as the sun descended and golden light cascaded over the dock, a package arrived. It bore no return address, only his name inscribed in dark ink. Inside was a weathered, water-stained notebook secured by a loop of twine. He opened it. Illustrations, annotations, fragments of poetry, and diagrams of marine life rendered in a delicate yet assured style, dispersed across the pages, depicting moments from their shared experiences. Him at the helm, her extending towards a turtle in the water, their vessel silhouetted beneath a starry sky. Additionally, a single page at the rear is meticulously torn and folded. Her handwriting was unadorned and consistent. "I perceive the ocean through your perspective, an image that is now indelibly etched in my mind. I appreciate your reminder of what is significant. Regardless of your desire to avoid future encounters, it was imperative for you to understand that you have transformed something within me, perhaps everything." Blaine gazed at the page for an extended duration. The sea remained unchanged outside, yet it now exuded a different essence, as if, across its expanse, another individual was contemplating the same horizon, regretting their ease of relinquishment. The first occasion Blaine encountered her again, she was traversing the dock in the early morning fog, her boots soiled, a satchel draped over her shoulder, and her hair styled in a braid. She bore no resemblance to the woman who had departed. Absent were designer attire and luxurious luggage, replaced instead by a resolute determination in her stride. "I have returned," she stated, halting a few feet from his vessel. "I recognize that I am not entitled to much from you, yet I returned for the ocean and for our initial endeavor." Blaine remained silent initially, standing with his arms crossed, defensive. "I wish to assist," she persisted. "I have read about the project you were contemplating. Initiatives for children's education, coral reef rehabilitation, and sustainable fishing practices. I intend to finance them." He raised an eyebrow. "With Monroe's funds," she clarified, "with my own. I divested my shares in the company. I distanced myself. I am not here as Monroe's daughter. I am here as an individual who supports your endeavors." He gazed beyond her towards the horizon. "I do not require your charity," he stated bluntly. Her tone remained unwavering. "This is not charity. It is a collaboration. I will reside here, engage and work here, and participate in all community activities. If, after 1 month, you still believe I do not belong, I will depart." It was a daring proposition. He held it in high regard. Nevertheless, it required him a week to acquiesce, and she was entirely sincere. Celeste relocated to a modest rented shack near the village center. She prepared meals with the women, assisted in repairing fishing nets, and participated in early morning excursions to sea. She coordinated shoreline cleanups with local school children, educated them about coral ecosystems, and composed grant proposals late into the night by candlelight. Blaine observed from a distance first, remaining cautious. However, with each passing day, she garnered their trust, as well as his. He gradually allowed her back into his life. Together, they meticulously repaired old boats, planted seagrass, and reconstructed a dock ravaged by the previous storm. The project expanded, as did their bond. Implicit yet profoundly entrenched, this time in collective endeavor rather than mere shared experiences. Subsequently, a shocking revelation emerged. A breaking news headline dominated regional media. Billionaire's daughter romantically involved with local fishermen to enhance the image of an ecological initiative. The article featured indistinct photographs of Blaine and Celeste enjoying lunch with the village children. It alleged that Celeste was distorting the narrative for public relations purposes, portraying Blaine as an active collaborator in a strategic rebranding initiative. Compounding the situation, the article was disseminated by a media organization owned by Oceani's Resorts, a direct rival of Monroe's previous enterprise. The repercussions were swift. Journalists inundated the beach, and volunteers who had previously supported them began to scrutinize the mission. "You exploited him," remarked a local woman, crossing her arms at Celeste at a meeting. "You included us all in your narrative." Blaine remained silent during the confrontation. He remained impassive while rumors circulated. That evening, he challenged her. "You ought to have anticipated this occurrence," he remarked softly. "You ought to have anticipated their transformation of it into a spectacle." "I did not disclose any information," she asserted. "I did not engage in conversation with a reporter." He gazed at her, weary and disillusioned. "However, they located us, and now they are tarnishing our reputation. Individuals no longer have confidence in me. They lack trust in us." She implored, "Allow me to rectify it." He declined with a shake of his head. "You claimed you were no longer a Monroe, although the world perceives it differently. Perhaps. I am uncertain about your boundaries." She recoiled. "Is that genuinely your opinion?" He stated that he believes he can only exist as a footnote in your narrative. "I cannot fulfill that role." Once again, Celeste departed silently that night, tears in her eyes, uncertain of her future reception or whether she should attempt to return. Celeste departed silently. No explanations, no elaborate displays, merely the sound of her boots crunching on gravel one last time before she vanished down the road at dawn. The villagers awoke to discover her absence. The modest rented hut was vacant, except for a few hastily written notes intended for the children she had instructed. However, she did not revert to her father's realm of gleaming glass skyscrapers and hushed executive suites. Instead, she journeyed further, deep into the archipelago, where names held no significance and the tides served as the sole measure of time. There, under an alias, she begun anew, discreetly volunteering with grassroots researchers to investigate reef resilience and assist local fishing communities in their recovery following storms. She was taciturn, industrious, and concealed her narrative behind the smile of one who had mastered the art of becoming inconspicuous without ceasing to exist. Upon returning to the town, Blaine attempted to replicate the same actions. He returned to his former boat, reinstated the cadence of fishing, nets, and solitude. However, the ocean now felt altered. Each wave bore a recollection. Every breeze resonated with the possibility that the endeavor they had initiated remained incomplete. The youngsters ceased to attend. Although the sea provided sustenance, it offered no tranquility. One morning, an envelope was delivered. Unsigned, nevertheless affixed with the official seal of the International Oceanic Conservation Forum. The invitation was formal, requesting a special guest appearance at the closing ceremony of their annual global conference on the mainland. He gazed at it, perplexed. He did not submit an application. He had failed to submit any materials. However, he departed. Curiosity exerted a stronger pull than dread. In the vast hall, Blaine stood uncomfortably backstage, attired in his only blazer, clutching a printed speech that had evidently been composed by another individual. A statuesque woman with a clipboard smiled at him, unaware of his unease.